Have you noticed how everyone seems more stressed lately? Now, you're most likely listening to this podcast because I talk about money, property, success and wealth. But if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I believe that true wealth isn't anything about how many properties you've got or how much assets you've got, but true wealth is what you're left with when they take all your assets, they take all your property away. In my mind, to be truly grateful, you need to be both happy and grateful for your life. But as I said, for many, it seems harder and harder to be happier today, as everyone seems to be more stressed about the continual changes occurring. Now, it started with the uncertainties of COVID a few years ago, and for most of this year, the media's been scaring us with the bogeyman of inflation, of rising interest rates, of lower living standards, and the possibility of even maybe we're going to have a recession. So in today's show, our focus is going to be a little different. Well, actually, it's going to be a lot different because we're not going to talk about property, but we're going to be discussing another very important part of your wealth, because today my guest, Merv Neal, is going to teach you how to cope with stress. Now, please don't be put off by this. This is not a rah-rah session. Please listen to the show because I'm sure you're going to enjoy it, as first of all, Merv's a great speaker, a great presenter, but I know you're going to benefit from it, as Merv has recently conducted a great training session for our team at Metropole in Melbourne, and I know how much benefit they got from him. So welcome to today's show.
Welcome to the Michael Yardney podcast, where twice each week you will learn a number of new ideas regarding success, property investment and money in around 30 minutes. Our show is brought to you by Metropole, who specialise in helping you grow, protect and pass on your wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. Now here's your host, Michael Yardney, Australia's authority in wealth creation through property, who has been voted one of Australia's top 50 most influential thought leaders.
In addition to the staggering impact on physical well-being and mortality, COVID-19 coronavirus is also taking an unprecedented toll on our mental health. Look, there's been numerous studies that have shown global increases in the prevalence and the severity of depression and of anxiety, as well as an increase in post-traumatic stress disorder. Can't almost say that. And there's also been extra substance abuse, unfortunately. And these increases most likely stem from the changes to the daily life we've all been asked to make in an attempt to mitigate the viral spread. Boy, have our lives changed. And then if you're in business or if you're a property investor, the continual changes in the economy and the negative messages of the media, they keep creating more stress, don't they? But as humans, we don't like change. We like things to remain the same. But since we can't control the outside world, we're going to have to learn to better control our reaction to it. And that's the subject of my chat today with Merv Neal. Now, you've probably heard that laughter's the best medicine. But did you know that it's the best also at prevention of illness, of emotionally, mentally, physically and spiritually helping you? As you're going to find out as I chat with Merv, he's the laughter yoga guy, and he's the CEO of Laughter Yoga Australia and New Zealand. Now, Merv's appeared recently on ABC, SBS, Channel 7, Channel 9, several radio programs, so I'm really excited to have him on because I know he's not a theorist. He's created his own financial wealth in his own business, and he also, like you and I, are interested in property. He invests in property, which has now fueled his lifestyle and his passion. Boy, after that long introduction, welcome, Merv.
Michael, thank you so much. It's absolute privilege and delight to be here, and I never ever thought I would be on a financial wealth podcast with the type of work that I do, so this is a new experience for me, so thank you so much.
Well, it's going to be fun because, as I said in the introduction, I've experienced your methodology firsthand when you did a training session for the Metropole team in Melbourne. Now, before we chat about you and how you help people, what are your thoughts about my opening comments and my observations that everyone seems more stressed at present?
COVID, and I'm not exactly sure how old you are, Michael, but I think we're around about the same age. And that means that we've been on Earth an awful long time. And I'm into my 6th decade of owning and operating my own businesses. And I've never seen anything like COVID. I thought I was going to pass on to another form of life somewhere else without experiencing a major event like a war or a depression or something like that. We've seen other things like the coming down of the Twin Towers and the global financial crisis and a few recessions and the likes. Mine, the big significant one was the Y2K phenomenon, where we transitioned from one century to another, and I was in IT. So there's been these major events, but my goodness, COVID is one with steroids, absolutely one with steroids, and it's going to be long lasting. I heard something just today on the midday news saying, when is it that we actually say that COVID's over? So they're already talking about, oh, it's over when this happens, this happens, this happens. Yeah, but what about the side effects? The side effects are going to last for quite some time. You can't put people. I'm in Melbourne, you're in Melbourne. I'm not sure where the listeners are going to come from, but in Melbourne, we experienced the longest ever lockdown days of any city in the world. Now, you can't just lock down people in their homes for the longest period of time in the world without there being consequences. And you don't just come out the other side and go, oh, everything's okay now because the germ or the virus has subsided. So I'm quite excited in a weird sort of way to have experienced such a phenomenon in my lifetime and the impact that it's had not only on myself, but my family, businesses like yours and mine. Back in March 2020, my business went from boom to bust. I was having the best year ever with my laughter work. And then all of a sudden, within 48 hours, I was sitting here looking at a blank screen and a book full of cancelled work opportunities. So it went from boom to bust. So it was really important, I found, in business, as you would know, to have a pity party. So, sit down and cry and go, oh, woe is me, oh, the world is not fair, etc. And then once I got over the pity party, I thought, well, how do I rebuild my business, this damaged business? Now, sometimes you just can't. I've experienced lots of trauma with people who've lost their businesses of decades, were crushed by COVID. I was fortunate in that I could actually rebuild mine online, even when everybody, all of the experts in the laughter community said, well, you can't. And I said, well, I must. And I did. So after 3 months, I'd rebuilt it and it was online. And the subsequent 12 months, Michael, was the best ever year I've had on top of what was going to be the best year ever, because all of a sudden I had an international reach. I could do gigs for Google at an international level, Facebook, Amazon, eBay, you name it. Some of the biggest names in the business were asking me to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning because their Brazil site would like a laughter session. I'm going, that's fine, let's do it. So,
hey, look, we're laughing about it. But now we're left with, I guess, something a bit like post-traumatic syndrome, isn't it? And it seems to take all forms. Some people are depressed. Some are stressed. I've not seen as much stress. Others are, I don't know what the right word is. Is it languishing? They're not depressed, but they can't be bothered getting out there. They haven't got their mojo back, Merv.
There's a thing called fatigue or chronic fatigue. And apart from the other things that you mentioned, Michael, before we started chatting that were on the increased substance abuse, self-harming, etc., one of them is chronic fatigue has been on the increase as well. And once you get to understand how your body, mind, and physiology works. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I've been studying this stuff for the last 17 years full time about how our body and mind and physiology actually works and what impacts that stress has on it. And when you are stressed, you don't breathe properly. Therefore, you don't get the necessary amounts of oxygen into the cells of your body, which is energy. So if you want to be de-energized, start breathing incorrectly. And people who are depressed or anxious certainly have a changed breathing process and pattern that actually limits the amount of oxygen going to the cells of their body. Now, having said that, at a physiological point of view, listen to the amount of people, Michael, that say, I am tired of COVID. I am tired of this situation. And that very word that they use is an indication of what's going on in their mind. And their mind, their mental state is exhausted. So we don't just have physical exhaustion, we actually have a mental exhaustion as well. And the two are absolutely associated with each other. So as a laughter therapist, I work in our conventional medicine system in hospitals and clinics and the likes, and our health professionals, doctors, nurses, physiologists, all of these sorts of people are physically tired because of the long The long hours that they're working the sort of hours that I used to work as a youth in my workshop automotive business. I'd quite easily work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and get away with it. In fact, I think I thrived on that sort of activity. These people are not. And what's more,
because you've got to actually want to and choose to do it, don't you?
oh, absolutely.
But what I want to do is, before we talk about how to better cope with all this stress, let's find out a little bit more about you as a person. So tell us a little bit about your business career and how you started your business, what you've done, and you also are interested in property. And while this is not going to be a property podcast, let's find out a bit more about you, because I think people are wondering, who's this weird guy Michael's got on with him today? Why should I even be listening to him?
I love that weird word, because that pretty much sums up the work that I do. And I tried to resist using it for myself until I accepted that I was weird, and then the world becomes such a more fun place once I accepted that I was a little bit weird. I had the opportunity at the age of 12 to start my own business. Now, it just fell onto my lap, and I went to my dad and said, "What's happening?" He said, "You have a business opportunity." I said, "So what do I do with it?" He said, "Well, set a target and a plan and stick to it. Set a target and a plan and stick to it." Now, I didn't, at the age of 12, really understand what that meant until an article in a newspaper said that this young man had this business opportunity, probably going to become a business tycoon. So I went back to Dad. I still have the article in a little memento here on my desk going back to those days. And I went back to Dad and said, "What's a business tycoon?" And he said, "Well, a millionaire." And there was a saying back then, since I've reached 40, it's no...
That was a lot of money back then.
My word, there was. Absolutely. So I set the target at the age of 12 that at the age of 40, because life begins at 40, except when you're our age, then it begins at 70, that I would be a millionaire at the age of 40. So I just did.
Now, Merv, sorry to interrupt you. That's exactly the goal I had set myself, a millionaire at 40. And again, $1 million then is equivalent of maybe, I don't know, $5-10 million today. By the way, I didn't make it at 40, but I made it at 45. And then I lost it going through my asset reallocation program through my divorce. But that's another matter. So I didn't ever go broke, but yeah.
Dear. Oh, well, how deliciously ironic that the same thing happened to both of us. But it was quite an easy thing to do. Like, here I am at 12, here I am at 40. Do the maths. And one of the things that I've found is it's okay to make money, but you have to accumulate money. And what so many people do is the more money they make, the more money they spend, and so end up with a net zero wealth of zero, and which is really quite sad. So my target was about not just achieving the goal of having made $1 million, but having saved $1 million. And that put me on a really interesting path of really valuing every dollar that I had. And of course, back in those days, it was all in your hand. I'll never forget, apart from 52 years in business, my 6 years in the military, and every second week they gave it to you in cash in your hand. So I had a really good understanding and a firm grasp of what a dollar was and the absolute worth of that dollar. So I valued that greatly. So at the age of 12, I think it was in my blood, in my DNA, and everything was a business opportunity, and an opportunity to not just make money, but create wealth for myself. In the businesses that I had, they were all successful because I was fairly disciplined and very determined. That was the two things that the military gave me, was discipline and respect. Great values to have if you're going to own and operate your own business. And by the age of 40, I got there with the help of the Y2K phenomenon, which had my business booming throughout that transition because I was in IT. Everybody wanted IT services, even if they didn't need it. So it was just a great time to be in business. Unfortunately, when I got to that goal, because I was not passionate about money and wealth, I was actually obsessed. I determined that in the next 5 years, I'd double it, because this is what people do who are out of control. And especially when the vision is money, you'll never, ever be totally satisfied because there's always more money that you want. So I did that. and made it in the next 5 years. Once again, very determined to get to that target and assisted by the Y2K that was going on. Unfortunately, I didn't look after myself. So long hours, as if I was 20 instead of 45, and lots of drinking and just not looking after myself. And I got there at the age of 45. As soon as the dollars went in the bank, because I sold that IT business, rushed to hospital and given a very severe diagnosis, and the doctor said, "We can't help you."
Really? What was that about? Tell us a little bit about that.
Stress, alcohol, long hours, not looking after your health. As simple as that. So I'm a big believer that sustained periods of stress creates illness. Now, that illness was possibly going to happen.
You're not the only big believer. I mean,
Yeah,
it's true.
sure,
It's a fact, isn't it?
Absolutely. But it's the stress that actually tips you over the edge and puts you into that situation. So I believe with COVID, it hasn't actually created any problems at all. It's just brought them to the surface. You know, these problems were always bubbling.
Now, let's be clear. We're not belittling those people who've had a very severe illness with it, and some have died or still got ongoing problems. So COVID has caused some real medical problems as well, but we're not qualified to discuss that. We're talking about other side effects, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Definitely the other side effects. And COVID has had its physical toll on some people as a virus. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. But it's the stress that's been related to COVID is what I'm actually referring to there.
Yes. Yes. So let's go back to your illness, because I remember you telling me the story, and it was, can I use that word weird again? This is interesting. I don't think I've used that word for years, and I've used it twice in the last 10 minutes.
It was weird. Let's call it surreal, because I'd worked so hard to be so successful, gotten there, and I'm going, wow, I've made it. I'm at this pinnacle. I've made this money, which I called wealth at the time. I'd had several properties as well too. So I'm sitting back and going, made it. At the age of 45, I'm financially independent, can sit back and relax and take life easy for the rest of my life, should I choose to do so. Then all of a sudden felt very, very unwell. Went to my doctor. He rushed me to hospital, and that was where the diagnosis was made. So essentially, the long sustained periods of stress and alcohol and not looking after myself had shut down my bone marrow, which produces your blood. And if you don't produce blood, it needs to be reproduced about every 28 to 30 days. You don't have enough blood within your system to fight disease. So my immune system was dead. And it was not clotting, so I was bleeding internally and externally. And it wasn't until 2019 I was invited onto a TV show where Dr. Charlie Teo, one of our notable neurological surgeons, brain surgeons, actually diagnosed me on national TV.
Really?
Yeah, and suggested that I was actually hemorrhaging into my brain as well too. So that's the extent of how sick I was.
But you had an unusual side effect from your illness, didn't you? Tell us about the laughter.
Well, I started to laugh. And, well, really, this was not a laughing matter, but I started to laugh uncontrollably. So Charlie actually diagnosed us as a thing called pathological laughter. And this is a real thing. You can Google it. And it's when you start to hemorrhage into your brain and the brain malfunctions and you start to uncontrollably laugh. So I didn't actually go looking for laughter, Michael, as a solution to my illness or the side effects of my illness. It found me by chance. But the interesting thing was, the more I laughed, the better I felt. And the better I felt, the more I laughed. And 8 months later, I was totally cured and walked out of there vowing never to go back there again and find out more about the power of laughter.
What was the initial diagnosis? What was the prognosis? What did they say was going to happen to you?
Well, maturation arrest and aplastic anemia were the actual medical terms used. And the maturation arrest is where your blood stops producing. A cardiac arrest is where your heart stops pumping. Maturation arrest is where your bone marrow stops producing. And the anemia that's involved with it is because I didn't have enough blood cells to actually clot, so it caused internal and external bleeding.
And they gave you a prognosis that you wouldn't survive, isn't that right?
Well, I'd pushed the boundaries just way too far. way too far. And they just said, there's not a lot we can do about this. Go home and rest and put your affairs in order.
But laughter changed all that. So tell us about this new laughter business that you set up.
Well, it's the most fun business I've ever had. I've had some enjoyable businesses, but this is the most fun business. I get to go into significant organisations such as yours and talk to your people about the importance of looking after yourself at an emotional, mental, physical level, but then being able to manage the stress. And just recently, we had the privilege of being on ABC TV, one of the episodes of Catalyst, and we found through medical and scientific research study that we can actually reduce stress levels by up to 65%. Now, the doctor who was in charge, Dr. Sarah McKay, a neurological scientist from New South Wales, said that she'd never ever seen anything that reduces stress levels as quickly and as easily as 30 minutes of laughter.
30 minutes.
30 minutes of laughter.
So you've now created a business out of this, helping people.
I create a business out of everything, Michael. It's in the
So tell us a bit about Laughter Yoga Australia, because when Kate Forbes organised that for our Melbourne office, I thought, okay, she's doing one of these wacky things because she's into those things, and I'll come along. But while there were people with mixed ideas when they first started, even my wife Pam came along, and we were a little bit sceptical. Clearly, afterwards, we felt better. And can I tell you, it's only been a week since we had that session at the time of this recording. And each morning, I've actually, when I felt a bit more stressed or a bit uncomfortable about things, I've actually forced myself to laugh, and it has made a difference. So what message have you got for people who are listening to this who are a little bit stressed?
Choose to be happy. Choose to be happy.
That's a choice?
Yep, it's a choice. Now, there was a concept created by, I think his name was Stephen Lundeen, the FISH Principles for Business, FISH. I'll try to remember all four of them. Choose your attitude, make their day, play, and there was one more. It's a very important, very significant business model that was created by this person that was rolled out throughout the world. And I got hung up on the choose your attitude. How can you choose your attitude? And the first thing that you need to do is have experience of joyful situations. And we've all had them, but whether we actually retain them in our memory or not is another thing. So with the laughter exercise that we did with your people as an example, just smiling and looking and nodding and laughing with others, even if it was just with yourself, and the different laughter exercises, you can actually choose every morning to wake up and laugh. And if you do, you have a positive impact on your body, mind, and physiology. What can happen, though, is we'll wake up and we'll look forward to the day and say, but we've got all of these problems, or I've contracted this disease and I'm lying in a hospital bed. They're just reasons that we provide ourselves to choose not to laugh. So we have to overcome this thing called the mind. And once we influence in a positive way the mind and get the mind out of the way and put the laughter into the body as an exercise modality, some things start to shift and some things start to change. So you said yourself, we can rewind the tape. You wake up and you sort of weren't feeling flash, so you forced yourself to laugh. Now, that required a conscious decision of the body to do it, overriding the mind, because the mind was saying, why are you doing that? That's really quite stupid. That's weird. Why are you doing that? So put the mind aside, and then all of a sudden you felt better. So that's what it's all about.
So is there a chemical basis to this, Merv? Is there something happening inside your body?
There is everything happening inside your body. And if you go back to the Catalyst episode this year, it was called The Science of Relationships. Dr. Sarah McKay talks about the science of laughter and what happens. And there is absolutely a hormonal and chemical change that happens within your body when you laugh. The four major chemicals that get produced when we laugh, there's a dose of chemicals. I call them a dose, D-O-S-E. And the first one is dopamine. So dopamine production increases when we laugh, and dopamine is our reward drug. That's the one that goes, well done, Michael, you did a great podcast. Why don't you do another one? Because it feels good every time you do it. The next one is oxytocin. That's sometimes loosely referred to as our love drug, or as Paul Zak in his book, The Moral Molecule, talks about, it's a feel-good drug when we are close and intimate with other human beings. Our oxytocin levels raise. And this goes back to a gratitude, appreciation, giving and receiving. So our oxytocin levels increase. Serotonin knocks out the cortisol. Cortisol's our stress drug. Serotonin is our negative stress drug. So that's what they actually measured, the cortisol levels or reduction of cortisol levels as a result of increased serotonin. And the last one is our endorphins. Now, our endorphins are our body's natural painkiller. The word endorphin means with morphine. Dr. Craig Hassad, who's in charge of general practice and medicine at Monash University, in his book, The Essence of Health, says, quote unquote, endorphins are 100 times more powerful than morphine. And when we laugh, we create endorphins. So this helps to numb our nervous system, which takes away any concept of pain between the body and the mind for a very, very short period of time.
Now, I'm going to ask you for some advice in a moment, but just to give some credibility to that, I know you've worked with some big companies. You've also worked alongside medical practitioners and also in the correctional system. Is that correct?
Absolutely. I did not enjoy it at all, the last one in the prison environment, but there is a need.
So you were on the right side of the bars, weren't you?
I've done some things wrong in my time, Michael, but I've never been caught, all right? So that was unnerving because I was facing people who were very, very angry. Very, very angry and had done some really bad things. And, to be surrounded by these people, that was unnerving for a start. But I thought, no, hang on, I could actually have a positive impact on these people's lives, even though they're in a situation of incarceration. So that was a challenge which worked and worked very, very well. What was interesting about that, the only other time I've heard the word lockdown is in a prison system. So it was a really, really poor choice of words to put us into lockdown. They could have said, health incarceration or health safety purposes or something like that. But lockdown is a really harsh term. And we're sitting there going, hang on, we haven't broken any rules. Why are you treating us as if we're prisoners? So that just added to the necessary stress. The other time where I've had people who are in a situation where they can't get out is in hospitals and hospices, and people have all of a sudden, in a heartbeat, sorry for the pun there, actually ended up in a situation of illness where you hand over, dare I say it, your dignity, your power, your joy to health professionals in the hope, and there's that big word hope, that they will be able to assist and fix and correct you in some way. But the very process of being in that very unhomely situation can be very depressing and really play on your mind. So every time I go into a hospital, I'm so glad that I actually get out of it because they're not very pleasant places. So how can we make them more pleasant and bring some joy? And that's what we do with the laughter sessions and the laughter work that I do.
But I know a lot of this is also based on research. So tell us about your current research with Bristol University around laughing.
We are very excited because we've been given the ethics approval, and I am absolutely in the process of recruiting people and businesses now to go through the process of a forced laughter situation. So it's called the Laughy. And if you imagine you're going to take a photo of yourself with your phone, everyone's done it, they call that a selfie, where you take a picture of yourself. So this study being done in conjunction with Bristol University and a person who's doing their doctorate out of Monaco, Frida Gonot-Szapinski, in conjunction with Professor Jerome Carson out of Bristol University, is asking people to wake up every morning, as you did the other day, and record themselves on video laughing for 1 minute.
I like the idea.
I challenge everybody to try it. It sounds easy, but boy, 1 minute of laughing all by yourself without external stimulus is a real challenge. What you then do throughout the day is you play that video back to yourself. So all of a sudden you've become your own best friend and your laughter buddy, and you actually play it back to yourself. So we've got some people that we're recruiting as we speak to who are seasoned laughter professionals who are going to be one control group, and the other control group, we're talking to several businesses at the moment and asking them to donate 10 of their staff to actually go through this process of waking up in the morning, recording 1 minute of laughter, and then playing it back to themselves just once per day. And we've got several measures in place that we're going to measure the physiognomy, how their face is going to change over time from regular laughter exercises, more laughter exercises than you would ever do in a normal day. Their mood, how has their mood shifted, and their mindset, their mental capacity to be more positive. One that would interest you and every other business person in the world. It's a thing called morale. Now, morale might have taken a hit in the last 2 years, and I've always known that my businesses are in trouble if morale was down, because if morale's down and people are not having fun and enjoying coming to work, guess what? They choose not to. So we've got all of these measures in place just through 2 minutes of laughing per day, 1 minute recording yourself, and then 1 minute playing back and laughing with yourself throughout the day.
And how long is this trial or research going to go for?
30 days, non-stop. So we've got a
Interesting.
start time, and that start time will be as soon as we recruit the seasoned laughter people in the businesses, and we're going to do this every day for a month.
Well, I don't know if it's still open or not. I'll speak to you off air, but I'd love to volunteer our team as well, because I'm sure we'll find 10 people amongst us who'd love to do that. So there is also this concept of mental wealth. We talk a lot about property wealth and shares and business, but anyone who's been listening to me over the years knows that I believe your true wealth is what you're left with when they take all that away. There's no use having the biggest property portfolio and being in hospital with stress or with COVID. So tell me a bit about mental wealth.
Yeah, it's a term that we created back in, I think it was just before COVID, actually. And it's on the front page of our website, the Laughter Yoga Australia website page.
Well, I'll be leaving a link to that and to your website, Merv Neal, as well, in the show notes. So anyone who wants to will be able to get in contact. But please go ahead.
Yeah, and we phrase this term mental wealth. Now, we're very much about mental health, but as soon as anyone says mental health, we think about Beyond Blue, Lifeline, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia. There is this absolute concept that mental health is mental illness, and it's not. Our mental health is all about our positivity, our thought process, our creativity, the ability to solve problems, clarity of thoughts. There's another thing we talked about, chronic fatigue before, Michael. There's an actual illness has been recorded during COVID called foggy brain. It's an actual illness.
Yes, it is.
And we've all had it. We've woken up and going, I don't know what day it is. I don't know where I'll put what's going on. And everybody got really concerned. They thought it was the early onset of dementia. It wasn't. It was just foggy brain. We were living in this cloud within our head. So clarity of thinking, clarity of purpose to be able to construct concepts and ideas and be positive is what we call mental health. Now, mental wealth is the combination of mental health in conjunction with your social health. And your social health is your support network. And I don't mean psychiatrists, psychologists, GPs, Lifeline, those sorts of things. I'm talking about the 3 to 5 people that are in your life that you can talk to about your most intimate issues without fear or concern. Now, we have found time and time again that if you have those people in your life, you invariably do not become depressed. And everybody that I've talked to who has been depressed, clinically depressed, has said, I had no one to talk to. Absolutely fascinating, the connection between the two. Some people on the call will know of Dr. Patch Adams. There was quite a famous movie made about his life, and he became famous for a thing called clown doctors, where he took clowning into particularly hospitals with children to help them maintain a more positive attitude and
I remember the movie.
He was not
Robin Williams, wasn't it?
Robin Williams was the actor, and I thought when I picked up Dr. Patch Adams from the airport several years ago, I was going to be picking up Robin Williams. I couldn't have been further from the truth. The two people were really quite different individuals, but I enjoyed his conversation with him about the social side of things that he's doing. And he was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize last year. And I listened to one of his interviews, and he said in that interview, he said, depression is not an illness, it's a side effect of loneliness. Now, I don't care whether he's right or wrong. That really exploded my mind. Depression is not an illness, it's a side effect of loneliness. Now, guess what we've had in the last 2 years, Michael? We've had 2 years of lockdown, social isolation away from our work colleagues, etc. And I like to coin my own little phrase, and I have a little phrase that says it's okay to be alone, but it's not okay to be lonely. Getting back to your original point, which seemed like a long time ago, what is mental wealth? Mental wealth is our mental health, our positivity and clarity of thoughts and creativity and being able to solve problems in conjunction with our social health, which is our social support network. And the laughter sessions that we do, as your people experienced, are a very intimate social connector through the act of laughing.
So there have been people who've been listening to us for over half an hour now, and I've enjoyed our chat. But what can you leave our listeners with that they can do to help their own mental wealth?
Find things that create joy for themselves. Now, we have happiness, and happiness is an external stimulus. This will happen. I'm happy because this has happened to me, but then that subsides and we are looking for more happiness. So find things that create joy. And joy is when you just sit there and you're going, yeah, I'm fine with this. Yeah, I'm at peace with where I'm at. I'm okay with where I'm at. I'm a good person. I've worked hard. I've done all the necessary things. So building ourselves up from a self-esteem point of view can be helpful for that state of joy. And I think at the end of our session, I expressed to your people when we're doing the little meditation, go to your happy place. Where is that? Where is that happy place? And take yourself there. And that's what I did with the prisoners as example. You know, we took them out of the prison environment in their mind to their happy place. And when you go to that happy place and experience a thing called joy, you will at least smile, or why don't you laugh for 30 seconds to a minute? Just laugh for absolutely no reason whatsoever.
And what does that do? Because smiling, even starting off before you laugh, does certain things, doesn't it? Just the smile.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I've just been reading up once again about the Duchenne smile. And this is where we change the facial expression, which changes the internal machinations of the body. So the facial expressions, the two different sets of muscles that I just read about, but I've forgotten what they're called, but they're the ones that actually push our cheeks up, but also push our eyes up and give those little crow's feet. So it's called the Duchenne smile. So just smile. It actually starts to change the chemicals within your body. But most importantly, Michael, it's body to mind. So the body is actually changing the way that the mind is processing things. So the mind cannot process things negatively if the body is sending positive messages.
And by smiling and moving your lips up and opening your nose, you're getting a bit more oxygen up in your system, are you?
You are flaring the nostrils. Well done. We talked about that the other day.
I listened. I paid attention.
You certainly did. And what's interesting, hopefully this has been an uplifting conversation for others to listen to. It's certainly been wonderful for me. But you can actually hear people being happy, even though you can't see them. So I do a lot of work with call centres and the importance of call centre people smiling before they answer the phone, because you know the very first words that come out of their mouth, whether they're actually enjoying their work and being helpful and wanting to be there to actually assist and support you. So
tip number one is find your happy place.
Yep.
And go to it.
Yep.
Is this something you should put in routine, put it in your calendar or on your phone or something to remind you to do?
With the Laughy project that we're doing, the Laughy study, our next step will be to create an app. And this app will be able to be administered by health professionals. We're actually approaching the NHS, the National Health System, in the UK, because that's where Professor Jerome Carson has been hanging out for many decades. And we want the health professionals to administer this app to people who are feeling down, depressed, lonely, isolated, whatever it is, anxious. And this app will remind you, oops, time to laugh right now for 1 minute. You actually record it. It gets stored on your phone within the app to be assessed by a health professional. And then it will just remind you throughout the day, oh, time for another minute of laughter, time to do it now. So no different to medication, time to take your pill. This is time to take your happy pill. It depends on your situation or circumstance, Michael. So as an example, someone who is severely depressed will need more medication, pharmaceutical medication, or a greater level of intervention through a psychiatrist than someone who's having a bit of a rough patch in their time. They may need a counsellor or a social worker or something like that, and a bit of a walk through the woods or something like that.
Now, I hope that our conversation has helped some people, but it probably is also going to have brought up some concerns for some people. A couple of weeks ago on Are You OK Day at our office, we had an Are You OK Day breakfast, and interestingly, it did bring up some concerns with some people who were prepared to privately go to their manager and ask for help. So I'm not good at this, and I'm not trained in this, while some people in our team are. But in case this has brought up something for you as one of our listeners, I'm going to leave a couple of links in the show notes for you to call somebody and ask, because hopefully you've got somebody in your circle that you can talk to. Be brave enough to do that. And if you haven't, then there are some great resources, aren't there, Merv?
Oh, there is some wonderful resources, and those resources are often if we're in trouble. And I've generally found, Michael, that people who find themselves in that situational circumstance have been on a bit of a slippery slope for some time. These things don't happen overnight. So it's about, and Are You OK is a classic example of identifying where you're at now and stopping getting into that slippery slide of negativity to actually be at that situational circumstance. So going back to the mental wealth and your social connections, it's just about connecting with positive, happy people. So I encourage the people, if it's brought up some things for them, they can go to Lifeline or Beyond Blue or something like that. Or why not find out those happy people in your life who bring you joy and ring them up and just have a quick chat to them. And you'll find that your whole mood will shift instantly by connecting with those other happy, positive people.
In fact, it's usually easier to talk to them than to a stranger over the phone. And just like you and I would be thrilled if somebody opened up and we'd be able to just change their life, make them a bit happier, I bet you're going to find your friend that you ring is going to be in the same position. So don't be shy in doing this. I think that's one of the great changes over the years you and I have been around, similar sort of time, that people are happy to talk, prepared to talk about this. It's not seen as the stigma, but still men are a bit more stubborn about this. So one last tip, Merv, before we finish off.
Oh, if you're a man, get over it. Come on.
Simple as that.
It's as simple as that. I did a Channel 7 interview just pre-COVID, and the lady said, so how do men handle this sort of stuff? And I go, oh, that's easy. Really badly. So for men, it's about opening up. And what I've found, Michael, is men will open up to other men more easily than to a female, as an example, or even a health professional, because they feel as though they're being judged. So I had this situation just the other day. I was with a bloke's bloke. This guy was a big man, big construction worker who was clearly going through some stuff. And he talked to me for about an hour and a half non-stop. I didn't have to say a thing, but he just opened up because he wanted to. But we kept it very positive and very uplifting. And, well, what can we do to help you with this situation and get you out of this situation? And there was a particular activity that he does that brings him joy. And it was constructing model trucks. And I said, construct a model truck once a month. Make that your target. And he did that. And he sent me a lovely message not that long ago saying, it worked. I went to my happy place and I did some happy things. So the last tip, if you're a man, get over it. don't think that we have to be this strong individual that doesn't express any emotions, that doesn't show any emotions, that doesn't show any concern for themselves, but in particular for others. So reach out, show concern for others, and it will come back to you in spades, guaranteed.
Okay, I'm going to offer a tip as well.
Please.
I personally saw the benefit from Merv's laughter yoga session with our team. So if you're in business and you're interested in helping your team, and Merv talked about the concept of morale, please go to his website. I'll leave a link in the show notes, mervneal.com. And even if you're not in Melbourne, Merv, I know you and your team work all over Australia, so we'll leave some links to your other company as well. And if you don't own the company, if you're not the boss, tell your boss about this, because I bet you he or she is interested in making the company more efficient by making you happier as well. So thank you, Merv, for, first of all, helping me and my team, and in particular for giving the last 3/4 of an hour of your time. I said to you this was going to be a short interview, but boy, it wasn't. It was a lot of fun. I appreciate your time, Merv.
My pleasure, Michael. All the best. Take care.
Well, I told you at the beginning of today's show that today would be a bit different, and boy, was it. But I hope you got some benefit from my chat with Merv, and I'd like you to find out a bit more by going to the links in the show notes and just looking up laughter yoga on YouTube. Boy, does it make a difference. And by the way, I am going to be getting involved in that study that Merv's doing with Bristol University. Some of our team are going to volunteer to be part of it. Now, if it helped you and you know somebody else who you think would benefit from this, please do them a favour and tell them about this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast. Hey, you can tell them that's not what I normally talk about, but there are people out there having some challenges, so it's your and my responsibility to help them get through these more stressful times. I'll be back again real soon with one of the normal shows of the Michael Yardney podcast, talk about property, success and money. But in the meantime, you can follow me on social media. Just look for Michael Yardney or go to my private Facebook group. Go to Facebook and look for the Property Update Facebook group. I'll be back again real soon. In the meantime, have a great week. Make it a great week.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Michael Yardney podcast, which was brought to you by Metropole, who help their clients grow, protect and pass on their wealth through strategic property and wealth advice. If you like what you heard and don't already subscribe, you'll find us on iTunes or on your favourite Android app as the Michael Yardney podcast. Watch out for our next show, which comes to you twice a week, and you'll learn some new ideas about property investment, success and money in around 30 minutes. To get more of Michael's thoughts, go across to www.propertyupdate.com.au and sign up for his daily morning briefing, and you'll hear from not only Michael but a group of leading property success and money experts. And just a reminder that the information you heard in this show today is general educational advice and not specific investment advice, as we don't know your personal circumstances. If you're looking for specific advice, why not ask the team at Metropole to help you?